Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing good. Except that we don't have
Good.
12.4 yet, but other than that, I'm okay.
Uh, how are you coping with it?
Well, a little bit sad, but it sounds like there were maybe a couple issues. Sounds like we might be waiting for a 12.4.1. Chuck did see some test drivers outside his house testing today, so that kind of suggests there's a 12.4.1 in the works. So hopefully we see it go out to customers this week.
That's great. Welcome everybody to episode 100 of the streamed episodes. Obviously, we had 1 year's worth of spaces before that. That went on for 12 hours at a time. Maybe in the future we'll do pre-cool recordings or something along those lines. Who knows? I don't even know if those spaces are still accessible, to be honest with you. But this is being live streamed on YouTube as well. I encourage people to participate in live chat. I think live chats are great, and I'm so happy to see that X is bringing live chats hopefully to X as well, X Spaces, so we can have both of them. Finflexity, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm just setting up. 1 minute. We'll talk then.
You're just looking at what topic we're talking? Yeah, you should do that on the listener mode. Don't come up to speaker board to do that. So 12.4 is not here yet, huh? Omar?
Well, it did go out to employees. It went out to Wave 1.
How
But,
many employees is that? A few dozen, right?
no, I mean, it should be a few thousand employees at this point. So it's out there, um, but it's just not in the hands of customers yet. So, it happens that, like, you see so many negative comments, like people going, I can't believe it. No 12.4. They lied to us. How could they do this? But, they got to make sure that it's safe, that it works, that it is really a big improvement, and not a step back in any major way. And sometimes you do additional testing and you find something that you're like, hey, we should fix this before it goes out wider. So sometimes you got to wait a couple extra days. It's not the end of the world. The most important thing, obviously, is making sure that the rollout is safe and there isn't any major blunder. Once you make a mistake, then things get much more difficult, and regulators scrutinize you much more. So I think that it's going to be worth the wait, from what I hear. The employees who I have talked to have it say that they are seeing a little bit of extra hesitation compared to the previous build, which they don't like, but not having the nag is incredible.
Max Chong in the reply says, congrats on 100. Thank you very much. Congrats to everybody, especially you, Omar, for participating in these spaces. Without your participation, obviously, there's no way this would happen. So no nags on the steer wheel straight from 12.4, huh?
Yeah,
How sensitive is the eye tracking?
it's about the same as before. So users are going to see a message at the top of their screen, and it's going to say attention monitoring enabled if it can see your eyes. If you see that message, no nags. If something is blocking its ability to see your eyes, like, for example, a tall hat, a long brimmed hat, or sunglasses or something, then it'll say attention monitoring off, and the nag will behave much like it does in 12.3.
Okay, good.
The other big AI news that's Elon related is XAI raising $6 billion. They're going to be buying an extra $100,000, 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs as well.
Well,
So
let's before we get to that, let's stick with FSD a little bit more. There is a video out there on FSD 12.4. Did you see that one? It's a 20-30 minute YouTube video.
yeah, I did. I didn't look at every detail, but I did notice that the auto park is faster. Um, it seems to be, not that different from 12.3 from the video. It's really hard to tell the differences from a video.
Mhm.
So I think you kind of have to try it in person to really get a sense of what it is and what it isn't doing.
Did you get any nags in the video? I didn't watch the thing, but I
I
kind of
think
looked
it,
through the comments.
I think it was mostly no nag. There was one moment where he went through a construction area where he touched the wheel, but he might
Mhm.
not have realized that you don't need to touch the wheel to dismiss the nag anymore. All you need to do if it beeps at you is just look at the road. And sometimes, depending on its certainty, for example, if it's driving through a construction zone or other sort of unusual area, it'll kind of try and get your attention if it doesn't think you're paying attention. But all you have to do now is just look at the road, and that should dismiss the nag. There's no need to actually touch the wheel.
Okay. I had a good question on Patreon. So this space is free and open for everybody because of my patrons. If you'd like to join this space, literally, none of the 100 episodes would have been possible without my patrons. If you'd like to join the Patreon, the link is at the top of your screens. And we have chat rooms that are actually becoming, they're picking up some speed, I think. A few messages a day in each chat room. So that's great. It's the easiest way to kind of reach and ask a question. And if I can't answer a question, then I'll ask it here. So it's a good way to kind of submit questions too. Omar, one question was, if when Grok is on the cars, can Grok be used for reasoning? Like, can FSD, um, if FSD can't handle, let's say, construction zone, a situation, a construction zone, it's not specifically trained for, can it ask Grok what it should be doing?
It's an interesting question. So I think, first of all, the voice assistant and the Tesla driving are two separate things. So we do know there's a Tesla voice assistant in development. My guess is it's going to be using Grok, given that Elon also runs that company. And with the new funding they have, I'm sure they're going to make Grok a cutting edge large language model. So I think that partnership makes total sense. We're probably going to see that in an update later this year. Then there's the self driving. Now, it does seem like increasingly these self driving and language models are actually headed towards unifying. Like, I think FSD 13 or 14 or whatever, some future version of FSD will actually be much like a language model. You'll be able to talk to it, it'll be able to explain what it's doing. And if you take a look at the Grok 1.5 vision paper, for example, it's really interesting. They show that they've actually trained on some driving data, probably that Tesla shared with them, and they're able to get the Vision Grok 1.5 to answer questions about the driving. Like they say, for example, do I have enough space to go around this car? And the model's able to answer that. So I think the sort of background knowledge that these LLMs have is going to be very useful for self driving. So Elon's acquisition of X and using that to get a bunch of training data and train, a cutting edge LLM that has sort of background knowledge about the world, it has context. I think that's going to be an essential part of the self-driving equation. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of that Waymo remote intervention thing. If you remember the Waymo remote interventions, they ask a question and it's like a multiple choice question that the human answers. Well, instead of having a human do it, you could also have a powerful model that was many times larger than what could run in the car, and the car could ask it questions when it's unsure, and you could have a larger model kind of intermediate that. And that would let any car, even a car that's very old with old inference hardware, um, i- find the right answer in those situations where it's unsure. And long term, I think even the model that runs in the car is really going to be kind of like an omni model. Like if you look at GPT-4, it can now take in text, audio, and images in real time. So it can take in video essentially, because video is a series of images plus audio. So video, audio, text, it can take it all in, and it outputs text or audio or even images and video. And I think FSD is kind of headed in the same direction. It's going to be able to take in video, audio, or even text and act on it. and communicate with people in the car and have a level of background understanding and reasoning that FSD doesn't have today. Like, for example, if it sees kids standing on the side of the road all in a line and the teacher's looking, it can conclude that, hey, they probably, are walking over to that school over there. It can recognize the school. It can see that it says school. It can see the kids with the backpacks, and it can, assume that that's where they're walking. Like that kind of reasoning and background context that is not necessarily in driving data, but is in internet data. That I think is going to be really important to getting to the next level beyond 12. I think we still have significant headroom in the 12 architecture to improve it, but I think even beyond that, V13, V14, you probably are going to see these language models and self-driving models overlap more and more.
Okay, so if I got that right, you're saying the language model and like the voice assistant and FSD today are different, and we shouldn't expect integration of that until next major updates, V13, maybe V14. But once it does happen, then we should see an improvement in reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the car is already pretty decent at reasoning, but this would give you sort of the level of reasoning you can see with an LLM. Like really understanding context and really understanding what's happening in a much deeper way.
Do you think that is needed for robotaxis?
Um, it may or may not be. I'm not sure, but it's definitely going to be helpful in the long tail of weird edge cases, especially situations you haven't seen before, where it may be a novel situation you haven't seen and you actually have to reason based on what's going on, maybe ask for help. It does seem like it's going to be really important than in beating human intelligence in all situations.
Okay, good. We have questions on in YouTube live chat. So let's go through that and then we can jump into XAI. I think we're kind of at that edge anyway. Um, Elon put out a tweet and said, apply for a job at XAI if you want to work on these things. And then he got a response from Jan LeCun. What did you think of that exchange?
Yeah, Jan LeCun has been savage lately. He's gone after OpenAI. Now he's going after XAI, and him and Elon have been having a little bit of a slapping match all weekend, which has been kind of amusing to watch. But that's kind of Elon's ethos since he was a kid. He believes someone punches you, you got to punch back. So now he's making fun of him. Jan's making fun of him, and they're both obviously incredible people who have contributed a lot to deep learning. Well, I mean, more Jan on the technical level, Elon on the business level. But y- I think maybe it's a very cutthroat situation, right? In the AI industry, everybody's kind of racing against each other, and Jan has been really coming out against LLMs. He's been saying autoregressive LLMs are way overhyped. This is not going to lead to AGI. It's just just saying things that sounds like what a human would say. There's not actually any reasoning there. And he's right to some extent. And he says, well, there's actually these new model architectures that we should be trying. So that's kind of part of his position on it. I think really the other issue is Meta. I think he's obviously been pioneering in many aspects of deep learning. Like he's had some pretty incredible contributions. But Meta is not really leading in the LLM wars. OpenAI, Google, even now XAI are starting to release better models than them. They don't have a vision-based LLM, for example. Grok does, Google does, OpenAI does. So they haven't really been leading in anything except that they've been releasing the models for free. So I think there's a little bit of that too. There's sort of competitiveness here. He's kind of, throwing shots at the competitors. Um, and I think a little bit of it comes from just sort of insecurity. He doesn't like, I think, that people are, saying, oh, these are the most advanced models. OpenAI is so advanced. And people aren't really talking about Meta in that context. So, you know, poking fun at each other on Twitter is fun. Um, taking shots at each other's fun on Twitter. But ultimately, who's going to ship the best products that people use? Are the AI models of the future going to come from Meta, or are they going to come from OpenAI or Anthropic? Are they going to come from Google? Or are they going to come from XAI? There's a big arms race in AI going on right now, and things are getting a little tense. I mean,
All right. Yeah.
the amount of drama is just crazy. You saw Jan Leike, who left OpenAI. He's now joined Anthropic, which is the people who split off from OpenAI. So, I mean, this is an incredibly powerful technology, and people have very differing ideas about how it should be built, what it should be like, and there's just a lot of drama, people fighting over it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. All right. Now to XAI. XAI raised $6 billion, um, presumably to buy GPUs and train a foundation model. There is a lot of concern out there that this is Elon's next step in kind of distancing himself from Tesla and taking some of the talent to XAI if his comp package does not pass. What do you think about these concerns?
Well, you know, if his comp package doesn't pass, then it does call his future into Tesla in question. And if he is the CEO of Tesla and has a significant shareholding, then XAI will be a major partner for Tesla. If he is not CEO, then they'll actually be competing with XAI instead of a partner, most likely. So, I mean, it really doubles their compute cluster if you think about it. And to the extent that the models that XAI trains are actually useful for the self-driving as well, I think it is potentially very positive for Tesla. Elon liked a tweet from Bill Lee, who's a SpaceX and Tesla and XAI investor, saying robot brain. So I think they're really thinking this is going to be pivotal for Optimus, for really giving it that ability to talk and reason about what it's seeing and do so many of the things that you want a robot to do. And the question I ask myself is, could or should this be in development at Tesla? Should Tesla actually be developing their own LLM? And I don't think so. I don't think it actually makes sense. Having this happen within Tesla would not be advantageous. Spinning it up as a separate company and raising equity. I mean, just look at Elon's ability to raise equity. He can just pull $6 billion to create a state of the art language model. That's a pretty incredible capability. I think if Tesla had raised $6 billion, it would have been seen very negatively. People would have said, "Oh my God, the auto business is struggling. They don't think they're going to have any cash. They need to raise. It's dilutive, yada yada." And Tesla doesn't have any proprietary data that would give it an advantage in training a language model. X actually does. And, X has a stake in XAI. They have an agreement to use X data for training exclusively, which other language models cannot have. And they also have real time access into the X platform, which gives them a sense of what's happening in real time that other language models don't have access to. So I think XAI actually has an ability to make a competitive model. They have the sort of internet backbone that you generate a lot of this training data from. And then, for Tesla, they can't really afford to be buying 100,000 NVIDIA H100s and dedicating them to training an LLM. Every single H100 they have needs to be dedicated to making self-driving happen as soon as possible and really training the FSD 12 model. Spending, and one training run for these LLMs, a state-of-the-art model, costs like millions of dollars. So to be spending millions and billions of dollars on an LLM, so what? Tesla can sell Tesla Plus for $20 a month? What's the payback opportunity here? Are they going to have an API business where they're going to be competitive with these other models? I don't really think so. Are they going to be able to attract the same talent and give them equity grants? I mean, you look at some of the team at XAI, they're just incredible people who've been foundational in deep learning. And, I think they're really not looking to join a big company. They wanted to start a startup or go somewhere where they could get equity and significantly shape the product. So, Tesla AI is very focused on robotics. And this is more sort of general purpose, like LLM type stuff. So I think in the future, maybe there could be a merger. Tesla could either take an equity stake or the two teams could be merged. But right now, it's actually, I think, advantageous for Tesla to have this LLM capability developed off balance sheet. And they raise money, they develop it, they take all the risk off balance sheet, and Tesla still gets the benefits. XAI has been releasing the weights of Grok open source, so anyone can go download the model weights and use them. Assuming that continues, Tesla can just take the model and use it in their products. And I heard the CEO of XAI is open to making a deal with the CEO of Tesla because they're the same person. So, I see it as really giving us this potentially really powerful, really expensive capability to develop a state of the art language model and doing it without risking, putting the company in a position where it might not be profitable. So I think it's potentially concerning. It's potentially something to watch. I think it's something Tesla shareholders should think about as they're voting for the compensation vote. But obviously, Elon is a major shareholder of Tesla. He will want Tesla to benefit, and I see there being a lot of potential benefit for Tesla with the $6 billion they raised, and I imagine they're going to probably train these models so that they can run on Tesla hardware, like run on the Optimus's computer and the car's computer natively, at least a quantized version of the model, and that they're going to really work hand in hand in making sure the development of the model suits the purposes of their robotics efforts. So I think it potentially is very good news for Tesla AI, but that assumes, of course, that shareholders don't do something very stupid and fire Elon.
Thank you. I've been thinking about it, and my estimate of the probability of this vote passing is still very high. On the other hand, if it doesn't pass, if his compensation package is not ratified, the probability of him leaving, I don't think is 0 or even 5%. I think the fact that this is the kind of message that it sends to Elon. Like if I were in his shoes, I wouldn't like that message at all. So yeah. What do you think about that? I know you had said before, it's 0.1% probability that he would leave if his compensation package isn't ratified.
No, I
Is
think
it
I think I said
so?
probably 0.1 overall or something, but I mean, I think if if it wasn't ratified, it would make sense for him to leave just in his personal interest probably. Um, they'd probably try and get him back like Sam Altman or something, then maybe, you can make a deal to get him back or something like that. But if you have the majority of shareholders saying they want to revoke your compensation package, that kind of suggests that the corporation isn't really a conducive place for you to continue to build and know you're going to have control over the company. So I'd say probably, 35-40% chance he leaves if it doesn't pass. But it's a tall order to say that I think the majority of shares believe that, Elon should not be compensated.
Okay, so you still think 0.1% probable that he would leave, all things considered?
Maybe let's call it 1%.
Yeah. Okay, so you're very confident the vote will pass then.
Yeah, I do believe the vote's going to pass. You're seeing, for example, them call people up and tell them to vote. You're seeing now a contest where you have Elon and Franz giving a tour of Giga Texas to one lucky person who voted, right? So send in your ballots showing you voted, and you could win a tour with Franz and Elon. All the Tesla fans are going to be voting, submitting that thing in. And, I don't know if that specific thing is going to make a material difference. But the point I'm making is that the vote is selecting for people who care. So people who feel passionately about this are more likely to turn up. Usually, very low percentage of people vote in these things. And the vast majority of Tesla shareholders, they really like him. They like what he's doing. They believe in the vision of the company. He's made them quite a bit of money. The people who hate him, and there's a lot of people who hate him, they don't tend to be large Tesla shareholders, right? Imagine if Dan O'Dowd had, billions of dollars of Tesla shares or something, right? He doesn't. And if he did, he probably wouldn't be so negative about the company. So I think, we're talking about even 51% is needed to pass. I think they can get to 51. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 55 or something, like it really goes down to the hair that much. But, you're talking about what does the majority of shareholders believe? Do the majority of shareholders by shares hate Elon? I don't think so. But of course, we have no way to know for sure until it actually comes out. We did have, of course, Glass Lewis, say vote no. They said vote no in 2018 as well, so that shouldn't be that surprising. But it could be very tight. We have to see.
Did you learn anything new, any other details about Glass Lewis recommendation?
No, I think it's pretty much in line with what they've said in the past and what they said in 2018. So, despite Glass Lewis recommending no last time, more than 70% of shareholders voted yes. So it's it's troubling, but expected, and not necessarily a predictor of how the vote's going to go. So again, we really don't know until that ballot comes out on June 13th.
Jake McCombs has a good question on YouTube live chat. He asks, "What are your thoughts on Tesla using stock to buy an equity stake in XAI as a means of getting Elon to his 25% Tesla ownership goal?"
Yeah, I think that would be a way to do it. A compensation package like what was offered in 2018 is no longer feasible because to give Elon, even a few percentage of the company is worth so much now that y- you know, it would just wipe out the company's entire earnings. So we can't really do that anymore. I think Elon is kind of setting up a deal here, and this would obviously have to be voted on by shareholders. But one way you could get him to 25% is to take a stake in XAI and buy the shares from Elon and give Elon Tesla shares in exchange for those XAI shares.
Yeah.
Then Tesla gets an
What,
asset. They get
what percent?
100,000 H100s. They get the
What percent?
LLM.
What percent of XAI do you think Tesla would have to buy to get Elon to 25%?
I haven't done the math, but they raised at an $18 billion valuation pre-money. That's $24 billion post-money. Post-money means you take the money that was raised and add it in. So in a $24 billion valuation, let's say the valuation, doubles again or something. It gets up to $50 billion. So I would see it probably being an all equity offer. So the offer would probably be in the form of, we take the XAI shares and we just convert them into Tesla share at some conversion ratio, to be determined by the market cap of the two companies at the time. Or in XAI's case, the private valuation.
Yeah. Finflexity? Inflexity.
So let's just assume that Tesla takes up 25 to 30% of XAI. So you would have to have a valuation of at least $200 billion. So that's not clearly feasible.
Okay, machine.
Yeah, I was going to say basically the same thing. They would have to acquire AI for it even to come close. And if they did, that would be a big embarrassment for the company. Just an obvious way to just try to appease the CEO. And, a proper independent board of directors wouldn't do it.
So, I mean, so Elon's at 19% fully diluted or something like that. So he needs about 6%. So, you imagine, let's say XAI gets to a $50 billion valuation. Let's say they're actually profitable somehow and they're bringing in billions of dollars of cash flow. You could do an equity exchange and say, okay, here's 10% of the company. Elon owns, let's say 60% of it or something. Boom, now he's at 25%. And then maybe do some buybacks to even it out and get to the desired level.
Machine.
Here's an idea. Why doesn't the CEO act like the rest of us and just sell some of his SpaceX stock and buy the shares he wants in Tesla? He just sold shares.
Do you not want XAI under Tesla? See, here's the interesting part. Hold on. A lot of people who are giving Elon, pushback on kind of creating XAI and having GPUs, some of the GPUs go to XAI and allocating time to XAI, also don't want XAI under Tesla's leadership. So it's on umbrella, which is kind of interesting because you're kind of talking both sides out of both sides of your mouth with that. I think some people just want to hate on Elon and whatever he says and does. So which is it?
What are you saying? I don't want XAI. How is there any inconsistency? Why would I want them
Okay,
to
so
acquire
then why are
XAI
you
at $20 billion?
why are you concerned about XAI being a separate entity?
I'm not concerned about it being a separate entity. I don't want them to waste their money acquiring XAI.
You've criticized Elon before in this space for the conflict of interest type of stuff.
Yeah, no shit. It's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you acquire the company instead. No, what happens is you either choose one company or the other to lead.
What is your ideal scenario here? What's your ideal outcome? If you could literally decide the future, how would it look like?
Elon buys shares of Tesla, so he has 25%, and that he's happy.
Like using the cash that he doesn't have? Is that what you're saying?
Sell if he really wants it. Sell some of his SpaceX stock.
But that is what he would be doing if Tesla bought into XAI.
No, it's not. That's shareholders funding Elon Musk. Elon Musk should fund Elon Musk.
Okay. Lauren,
Hey, thanks for having me up. So I'm in support of all the pay packages and paying Elon, but I would be pissed personally if they went and bought XAI at this point. My feeling on that is like Tesla should have at least been part of the seed round on XAI. You know, put up the $10 million to get 20% only fucking 1 year ago. If they wanted to make it part of Tesla, I would be fine if they wanted to do some deal where, like, in the future, where they need Tesla data or access to this dojo, the system that is maybe finally working in the future, and there's like an equity for data trade or something, and Tesla ends up owning a portion. But I think it would be just a huge giveaway for Tesla to pay $50 billion for some fucking company Elon started 14 months
Lauren,
ago.
you cannot curse in this space. From now on, people who do curse are not going to be on the speaker board again. Okay? This is a simple request that people should respect. It demonetizes the YouTube channel. And unless if you're going to go to Patreon and become a patron, then don't do that, even for a mistake. Idiot. Omar?
Yeah, I think what he was saying was a little bit confusing. On one hand, he was saying, I don't want XAI. Then he said, and we should have participated in the seed round. So which one is it? Should we be an investor or should we not be involved? I think the key is right now it's speculative, it's risky. Tesla isn't going to be involved right now. But in the future, you think about Optimus, you think about Tesla AI, the company owning and developing its own language model may make sense in the future when the company has, for example, a solid revenue stream where you're not just buying the company, you're actually making the company larger, you're adding revenue, you're adding new businesses to the company, adding talent. So I think at some point in the future, shareholders can evaluate that question. But if you look at some of these LLMs, if you believe all the hype, then it could be the case that in the future, this technology becomes very valuable. If it does turn out to be mostly hype and there isn't really anything valuable there that Tesla can't get elsewhere, then obviously there's no need to do an acquisition.
Machine.
Yeah, I think people are kind of getting confused on a few different issues. One is getting Musk to 25%. And if you're doing that through straight giving him shares, then you're adding, 5, 6% of Tesla's market cap. You have to give him in shares. And what's Tesla's market cap? I don't even know right now. 500 billion. So you need to get him like $30 billion essentially to get him to get enough shares. And you're simply not going to be able to do that with XAI at its current valuation. You just can't. And that's just not the way to go. If you wanted to say, oh, Tesla's going to invest a little bit in XAI, like, sure, fine. That's not going to solve the problem. Okay. Either Tesla has to significantly dilute to give him more shares, or he somehow finds another way to buy shares. Or the third way, which I would prefer, is that if they move to Texas, somehow they can come to some way of changing the structure so he can have more voting power or a different class of shares. That would make more sense.
Rumi. Rumi.
Hi guys, just a quick question. So if Elon didn't sell for Twitter acquisition, probably he would be closer to 25%. So say we give him in whatever way another say few percent that he gets to 25%. What prevents him from selling again and then coming back in 2 years and saying I need 25% again? Thanks.
Omar.
Well, I think obviously that was a situation where he was essentially court ordered to buy Twitter. So he didn't really have a choice. But I think most of like when we're talking about compensation, They typically have a lockup in terms of what they offer, like his last compensation plan at a 5-year lockup on the shares. I think when we're really talking about getting him to 25%, there's a few different ways you can do that. He doesn't really even care about having equity per se. He's as long as they're super voting shares or something like that, and it's effective 25% control or any other mechanisms that can achieve that. That's sort of all he's asking for. So this is kind of a discussion about his compensation going forward. What are we going to give him for being CEO? And you know, I'm not talking about today, obviously. Today XAI's valuation is very small. I'm talking about one day in the future potentially. If Tesla buys XAI to acquire the assets of XAI, for example, the GPUs, the talent, the technology, the customers, the revenue, whatever is built in the future, assuming something of value is built, then they can do that and they can get XAI, and Musk can, by consequence, also increase his stake. So that's one avenue that they have to get him to 25%, where the company isn't even necessarily compensating him directly, but acquiring another company. And they would obviously want to pay a fair value for it, have that studied. What is a fair value of the company? Are we not overpaying? But that's one way that you could get his stake closer to the 25% target that he's communicated that he wants.
Machine.
Tesla does not have currently, nor in the future, anytime soon, enough cash to buy XAI if it grows. They simply don't. So
They
they would just
wouldn't
have
buy
to.
it with cash. They-
They'd massively dilute their shares in order to do it. If XAI was worth $200 billion and Tesla's worth $600 billion, you want them to dilute their shares like 30% to buy XAI? This is very, very stupid.
Well, again, you're making a lot of sort of speculative arguments. You don't know what the market cap of the two companies is going to be. They don't need to use cash. You can acquire companies with equity. You can do an all stock deal with no cash or part cash, part equity. And they would not just be acquiring the company would have product lines, it would have revenue, it would have engineers. So it's not just purely dilutive, like, hey, let's just dilute the company for the hell of it or to raise cash. You're also bringing in new lines of business that are going to grow over time and actually add to the value of the company.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess I don't know exactly what the timeline is that Musk wants 25%, but I was thinking he wants it in the next year or two or so. And he's not waiting 5-10 years to acquire 25% for voting control. So we're talking about something that has to happen this year or next. And XAI is not going to be growing in massive product lines in that time frame, nor is Tesla going to have to change its cash position or its market cap 2 or 3x likely in that time. Although, there's always a chance.
I think right now the focus is really just on the 2018 compensation vote. Like, it's a little premature to even consider the form of a future compensation structure when we don't even know if the previous compensation structure was even legal, right? I mean, you might want to adopt something similar if everything works out, but that's all in question right now. So I think the priority is really, let's take care of this. Assuming the vote passes next month and everything sort of smooths out in court, which is probably going to take a long time, then I think conversation will turn to how to get him to 25% going forward.
Brandon.
Yeah, Machine said something like 5 minutes ago. I just want to point out how that's not going to happen. Elon's not going to sell any SpaceX stocks to do this. He owns like $80 billion of SpaceX. That's worth like 200 billion. He needs like $67 billion to get to 25% of Tesla, I think, as of right now. So there's absolutely no chance. After taxes and everything, he's selling like well over 3/4 of his SpaceX stock.
Well, I guess he really shouldn't have sold those Tesla shares before.
I mean, look, that's not really your problem. The question is really, do we want to keep this guy as CEO? If we don't want to keep him as CEO, then we say, sure, go fuck off. We're not going to pay you. You can stay or not stay. We don't care.
No cursing.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Kick him out.
and and then we can just kind of see what happens. Someone asked, okay, well, what if he sells? If he keeps selling and keeps asking for more, then we as shareholders can say, enough. We don't want you as CEO. But as long as we feel that the benefit to the company is net positive, then I think it's in the interest of the company to try and retain him, especially when he has so many other companies that he could go to and just probably make a massive amount of money taking a private company and taking it public, right? So we need to make sure that we're offering him compensation that makes Tesla interesting to him. Obviously, he is heavily incentivized as it is with his stock and his options, but just compared to the other opportunities he has, the other disasters at X and other companies, SpaceX, that are also competing for his time, we want to make sure Tesla gets as much of his attention as possible too, and that's what the compensation is designed to do.
Inflexity.
Yeah, so XAI just filed their SEC filing for the funding round, and they were offered $7 billion, but they apparently only sold $5 billion. So anyone knows whether the extra $1 billion came from any source?
Not me. Lauren. Grant.
Hey, I was just going to say to Omar's point around wanting to lock him up, I think the right way to do that is to ask him to not spend time starting other companies. I mean, like that's what most boards would do. That's what I would recommend. There's no guarantee that giving him a bunch of money means you get, you know, 30% of his time versus 20 or whatever. He shouldn't be starting other companies if he wants to be the CEO of this, half
Well,
$500 billion
the,
business.
the thing is, like, you don't really have that option, right? So you either have him as is, which is along with other companies, and his attention is divided across companies, the Musk economy, as Omar calls it, or you don't get the guy at all. You're never gonna get him to agree to, you know what, I'm gonna drop everything else and spend 100% of my time at Tesla. So you can dream about other options, but you just don't have those options. Omar, then Grant.
It's actually Tesla company policy that any employee can actually have a different job or even start a different company as long as it doesn't interfere with their obligations at work. So I think Tesla tries to appeal to people like that. Elon's value that he brings to the company isn't necessarily the time he spends. It's the vision he sets. The actual team members are supposed to be small independent teams that can do the work themselves. They're not people that need to be babysat. They're given a vision. They make sure they're still on track, but the team sort of does the work itself, right? He's not babysitting the autopilot team. He's giving them the vision of what he wants them to achieve, making sure things are on track, making sure they have the resources they need, maybe calling Jensen and getting them some GPUs, but they're doing their own thing. And I mean, I think Musk's other companies have benefited Tesla quite a bit. There's a lot of crossover. SpaceX uses some Tesla batteries. Tesla has the stainless steel alloy from the Cybertruck and other materials engineering, such as the materials engineering to develop custom casting alloys. That's the guy from SpaceX who they have as their materials engineer. He also does work for Tesla. And I think XAI too, there's a tremendous amount of risk in developing this sort of cutting edge LLM. Clearly, you need millions of dollars per training run, billions of dollars in total funding for the organization. And I think this is kind of a critical capability. We don't want to have to leave to OpenAI or Google, as Apple is having to do. They're having to work with OpenAI. I think it's really great to be able to own the technology ourselves. And I don't think it's really feasible given Tesla's margin profile right now to really do that in-house. So having at least a company where it's under Musk control and they can sort of train this LLM that I think is going to be very important for products like Optimus, I think there's a lot of benefits to Tesla. And if we told Elon, look, you can't start any other companies, he'd be much more likely to put someone else in as CEO of Tesla. And would we rather have a full-time idiot or a part-time founder with a track record of just incredible success?
Grant?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to respond to all of that, but the comment I'd make is that everything's always great and really good. And that's because you guys choose to see the positive side of things, which I understand. But sometimes I do think you've got to just take a step back and ask yourself, is it good that our CEO is starting an AI company while hyping the business we're invested in as an AI company? Is that a good thing? Is this stuff that we should go and pay him billions and billions of dollars for? Because on our time as shareholders, when we had him hired as CEO, he decided to start a new company. Does he deserve billions and billions of dollars for that? You know, for people looking in from the outside, these answers are kind of simple. I don't think that anyone would think that this is a good situation based on what you're kind of describing. It's obviously your prerogative to come up with the rationale for why this is all great, but you're kind of deluding yourselves in my personal view.
I mean, here's the thing for me. You can go get an RJ Scaringe who's going to devote all his time to this company and focus on it and focus on all the little details. But there's very few people in the world who can say, hey, you know what? I want to be competitive in LLMs. I'm going to go raise $6 billion, put together a team. And there are very few people who are qualified to be on that kind of team. Finding them, recruiting them, building that team. That's an incredibly rare sort of person. There aren't many people like it. And we have one as our CEO. I consider that to be a competitive advantage. There are some people who just like to spin everything negatively. Oh my God, he raised money. This is horrible. Well, it's not horrible. He bought X. You could say that was really the bad decision buying X. Even he tried to get out of it, but he kind of got stuck with it. And well, if you're buying X, obviously they should have an AI division. Meta has Meta AI. Google has Google AI, DeepMind. Everybody's doing AI. It would be incredibly stupid to have a company like X and not have an AI division that is trying to build a cutting edge model. So I see it as not necessarily, I mean, yeah, there are potentially concerns. I think definitely if his compensation package doesn't get approved, those concerns are heightened. But nothing has really changed all that much from before. XAI has been a company for quite a while now before this funding round, and it hasn't stopped Tesla from putting out some of the best AI products that we've seen from the company in years.
Rumi?
Hey guys, so we are talking about Tesla being benefiting from XAI. Now, the last round when he sold Tesla shares took a nosedive. He mentioned that Tesla shareholders will be benefiting from Twitter acquisition. We are yet to see any benefit from that, and now we are talking about say another acquisition from by Tesla and us being benefiting. So let's see the first benefit first, then we talk about something else. Because to me, it seems like I haven't seen anything. Thanks.
Rumi, do you mind sharing if you voted and which way you voted?
I voted yes. I have a bunch of shares I have been buying for a while. The shares I have bought before 2021, I voted yes for all of those. Anything I bought post Twitter acquisition, I voted no for those.
Interesting. Interesting. I think it's a little early to say. The jury is still out in my mind. How much Twitter acquisition has benefited Tesla shareholders. It's obviously not apparent in the stock price, but you can make arguments on both sides of that argument, and I think that you really need 3 to 5 plus years to determine. He also said long-term shareholders, right? Omar?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of benefits from each different company in various ways. I mean, you look at the Boring Company in Vegas, they've got this Boring Company loop under the casinos and they use only Teslas, right? That's an obvious benefit and free publicity for Tesla. You look at SpaceX, they share a material science engineering guy. The Cybertruck alloy came from Starship. You have other alloys for casting that has, transformed the industry. That couldn't have happened without help from SpaceX. SpaceX buys Tesla batteries to put in their rockets, for example, also. That generates a small amount of revenue. Then with X, you have, of course, X being a huge communication center for the company. They get a discount on advertising. They have also their product development. They've, for example, added recruiting and things like that. And really, when you look at the Grok 1.5 vision paper, go Google, Grok 1.5 vision, and look at its ability to answer driving questions. I think that the X data and the ability to train one of these cutting edge models is really actually going to become pretty foundational piece for self-driving as well and for robotics.
Machine and Uzi.
People are talking about needing 5 years to assess whether an acquisition was worth it. What about Solar City? Was that worth it? Their crappy solar panels, fake roof that they demoed, which sure, now there's some product, but it's a failure. Was that worth it? I think no. And so I that was a bailout for his
Well,
cousins.
here's the thing. I don't know if you read Adam Jonas' last note about Mosconomy and how the success or failure of one company under the umbrella impacts cost of capital for the rest. I'm sure you agree with that basic argument, right, Machine?
Yes. And I think ultimately
Okay, so then if Solar City had failed and the investors in Solar City were very much overlapping with investors in Tesla, and as I pointed out in my article in 2016, when you were a sperm in your dad's right nut, it's very important. It was very important for Tesla to have ensured the success, or at least making those investors full. And I can make further arguments why that acquisition was important. I think it is important for Tesla to offer a turnkey solution. It is important for Tesla to, on those 3 pillars, to have self-sufficiency. Doesn't mean necessarily that Tesla needs to allocate capital or attention if the rest of the industry is able to pick up that slack. But I think that acquisition is also cost only $2 billion too, so it wasn't massive dilution like that. It was important, and at that point, Tesla needed further capital raises. I mean, since 2016, Tesla raised billions and billions of dollars. So if that acquisition had failed, which had Fidelity, Tiro, etc., on, would they have invested further money in Tesla? That's a big question mark. Go ahead.
No, I agree with your points in general. Like, it wasn't that big of an acquisition, and I think its main benefit is why there's motorcycles in the background. What you said, so I think it's fine. I just think big picture, you're talking about the acquisition of these companies for Musk over time, Solar City, Maxwell. They're not really good investments. I get for Solar City why you maybe had to. I think the only smart investment so far, acquisition, has been Groman, the German automation company.
Yoda.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
sorry,
the-
Yoda, sorry. I've been skipping Uzi for a while. Uzi, go ahead and then Yoda.
If I'm on the XAI question, so if you're still want to talk about Solar City, I get that. I could still wait.
No, just make your point and then we'll go to Yoda.
All right, so I'm looking at the XAI question through a philosophical lens with like the Descartes' mind-body dualism. I think Tesla is the vertically integrated manufacturer, and the XAI is the software component, and X, the platform we're on, is the data set. And so this inductive reasoning capacity, the sense of personality, are going to be tremendously valuable differentiators for Tesla, and then for Optimus specifically. And I just think the big difference is that because XAI is not part of Tesla, it's, I guess, by definition, it's not part of Tesla, right? But if you're looking at the bigger picture, it's under the Elon umbrella. And so these partnerships, Elon has more control of the brain, which is the software part, whereas Tesla, the hardware part, is under public control. And so I think in the long term, XAI and Tesla all stack upon each other with a great synergy.
Yoda.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at Alphabet, when the Googles try to have these labs within the overall conglomerate, what happens is that there's pressure that cause competition for resources, especially when times take a nosedive. And so with solving AGI being so resource and compute intensive and not much revenue to show for, you actually don't want that on Tesla's balance sheet if possible. Keep that as a private company. Same thing with SpaceX. SpaceX has a lot of risk that is not going to be conducive to being a public company with its beginning years. So you certainly don't want that to be on any kind of public company governance approach. And so I think to answer the person's earlier question, Twitter or X will be the everything app that will be very useful when you no longer need to be driving your vehicle and you need to be productive, to be entertained, to carry out things like shopping. All that will be done on the X app. And the data set in which that's happening on X, the conversations, will be the training data set for Optimus, so that when that robot is having to converse with humans, that's basically the value there. So yeah, I think there's some synergies, but not immediately. It's going to be for the long run.
Inflexity.
Yeah, I just had a comment on the Solar City acquisition, if you don't have problem there.
I think we
Yes.
covered that. We covered Solar City. Omar?
No, I just wanted to say something related to the patents from there. Is that okay?
Omar?
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating the scale of compute that Musk is adding between his companies. We're looking at, I think they said 85,000 H100s by the end of the year for Tesla. I had heard through the grapevine that Tesla had also ordered an additional 100,000 H200s and B100s to be delivered over the course of 12 months. But Tesla never confirmed that. But then we heard this story out of XAI. So now I wonder if maybe it was an XAI order and not a Tesla order, or maybe Tesla also had a similar order. But between them, they've got like 200,000 H100s. Then they've got Dojo now in mass production as well, according to TSMC. I think it's pretty clear that they want to have more compute than anybody else. They're looking at that number one spot. They want to have more compute than Meta, more compute than Google, which is a tall order, right? It's a moving target. These guys are all adding more compute too. But so much of this AI race really just comes down to raw capital and raw compute. If the data is sort of eventually all even, right? All the LLMs are all training on the internet. None of them really have a significant data advantage. So if the data doesn't matter and everything just kind of commoditizes over time, then what is the real differentiator? It becomes, I think, primarily compute. So I think Tesla's doing all they can. They're buying as many NVIDIA systems as they possibly can. They're building up Dojo as much as they possibly can. But there's limits to what they can do, especially right now where they're not growing as fast as they were in previous years. So I think Tesla's doing everything they can possibly do. And then he's going and saying, well, let's raise even more money and buy even more, get an even greater share of that allocation, because whoever controls the compute controls the future.
Yeah. And one of the limiting factors that's kind of pressing right now is disengagement data. So even if they had 10x, 100x more training compute, how useful would it be? How much it would accelerate the progress is questionable. It's an open item. With 6 and 0 sum.
Hey guys. Hey Omar, are you familiar with Tesla sharing video data with XAI?
Tesla sharing what?
Their video data, basically the data they collect from the cars. Do you know if they're sharing that with XAI by chance?
Well, XAI did talk in their vision paper about how they had some driving data. If you look at the driving data that's in the paper, it looks like it is from a Tesla dash cam. So I don't know if that's just something they pulled out of their own dash cam, or I could see them obviously having some type of agreement with Tesla to do some sharing there and maybe get some consideration as well, like use of the models or something like that.
Yeah, can I reply real quick?
Yep.
Hey, Omar, earlier in a previous space, you mentioned something about, under some circumstance, Elon, could leave the company and potentially even become a competitor, XAI specifically becoming a competitor to Tesla. And I saw a few weeks ago, I thought I saw something saying that Tesla might be sharing video data with XAI. And that concerns me because, that's really our goal. Really, nobody has the video data that we have. And if that is being transferred in some capacity over to XAI, and eventually XAI becomes a competitor, obviously we kind of let our gold go out the back door. And I just wonder, this is kind of more directed at everybody. It just seems like as a shareholder, maybe we need to have a little bit more visibility on the agreements between these two companies. I realize that's not always the case. You don't just kind of have to share with shareholders agreements with vendors and partners and that kind of stuff in great detail. But in this particular case, with that data being so important, it does concern me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned. I think first off, we don't know that they're even sharing any data. When you talk about all the data they have, their training set is like petabytes and petabytes of data. So it's not like you can just kind of throw that on a USB drive and send it over. If they did share anything, it was probably, pretty limited. And they are probably also just collecting the data themselves. Like anyone can pull the USB stick out of their Tesla and get some dash cam footage and throw it in the training set. You don't need to get Tesla's permission. But we're talking about two companies that are controlled by Elon. I don't think they're going to do anything to hurt the company, even if they do have access to a little bit of data to train on. I would say that it would actually be beneficial to have a relationship because, first of all, if you can train this model to handle driving questions, as the Grok Vision paper is demonstrating, that has huge implications for Tesla. That is absolutely worth, working on and considering. And if they can make some type of agreement where, okay, we give you access to some training data that we have for your vision model, and in exchange, we're able to use your models in our products, I think that would be great. I'm not aware of any, agreement the two companies have on data sharing or anything like that. Maybe it would be in the 10K or something like that. But I think we're making an assumption saying that this definitely came from Tesla or that Tesla has given them access to all their data or anything like that, because I don't think that's the case.
Zero sum.
Hi. So I'm just wondering whether you see anything concerning or wrong with the fact that the CFO of XAI, Jared Birchall, is also the CEO of Neuralink, as well as the CFO of the Boring Company, as well as the head of Elon Musk's family office, Excelon LLC.
Yeah, Jared Birchall has worked with him for a long time. He's basically the head of his family office and just does a lot of things, administrative roles, things like that. So, yeah, he's been part of his team for a long time.
I mean, CFO is a little different. I think you'll appreciate that. And it's pretty unusual to have one CEO role and two CFO roles. You'll acknowledge that, right?
I mean, this is a early stage private company. So, at a later stage, if they're maybe taking further funding rounds or going public, I don't expect Jared Birchall to be the CFO. It's probably more in an acting capacity as the head of Musk's family office that he's performing that role right now. I actually hadn't heard that he's the CFO.
Yeah, so you can get that from company filings with the state. But they've raised $6 billion and they
Yeah, zero sum.
Yeah.
So do you have do you have another question? I think we're all aware of the facts that you're citing, but then you're kind of like stating facts and you're like, are you worried about this? I think you got the answer that he's not worried about it.
Yep, that's fine.
I mean, that sounds like it could even just be a placeholder before they have a real CFO. Like, okay, just put Jared Birchall for now, right?
Yeah. Do you have another question? Magic.
Hey, just wanted to note or just kind of ask a follow-up question on that Solar City deal. It appears, gentlemen, that you said something along the lines of it was okay that they bailed out Solar City because it ended up it allowed them to continue to be able to raise capital. So it's okay for a CEO of a company to use shareholder money in a negative yielding investment, just long as it supports the broader claim. I just want to address that point.
I think what he was trying to say is there was a risk if Solar City failed that investor confidence would be shaken. And Tesla was not profitable. It was reliant on external fundraising. So that could have posed an issue. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to, but shareholders voted and they thought there was overlap in the business.
Shareholders, just a key fact that people shouldn't ignore, like Magic just did. Shareholders, excluding the votes of Elon and other affiliated shareholders, more than 85% of shares voted were cast in favor of the acquisition. Magic?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that may. I'm not sure if that may be true, but again, what I'm saying is, do the ends justify the means?
It is true.
He can do anything as long as it's good for shareholders. He can break laws. He can lose shareholder money. It doesn't matter as long as the stock
price. Shareholders said that's not. You're putting words in people's mouth. That's not nowhere close to what we're saying. Shareholders said this is good for them. Who are you to say it's not? You're not a shareholder, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the solar roof was a flop. Essentially, it's way too expensive, and my neighbor has one. I think it's great that Tesla has vertically integrated solar. You can have one app. You can see the solar coming in, powering your home battery, charging your car. I think it's great. Obviously, it hasn't been that great of a business for Tesla, but they've kind of wound down the business for the most part and just kind of integrated into their energy offerings. So, not everything in business works out that well. It kind of made sense at the time. Tesla was very focused on clean energy and having solar vertically integrated. It was a great sort of value proposition. Now, as the company focuses more on AI and robotics, it's not really looking like an area of growth, especially given how the solar market is today. But you couldn't have really seen that at the time. I mean, any business has a risk of working out or not working out. And Solar City was essentially kind of failing as it is. It was in a liquidity crunch. That's why Tesla needed to acquire them.
Inflexity, your earlier point about Solar City panels or patents. Do you want to make that point now?
Yeah, so SolarCity basically owned the foundational patents that would allow Tesla to develop a uh, grid from megapacks, a grid from Powerwalls, which could, balance out its energy consumption within a state for California like. And also the auto bidding system is somewhat reliant on patents which were based in SolarCity. So they acquired patents and they acquired more talent than they could externally.
Grant, and then Magic. Okay, Magic and then Grant.
Okay, so again, it regardless if shareholders voted yes or no, this is a corporate governance issue. That's why I keep bringing it up, because it shows
The
that
corporate governance issue was examined in the lawsuit, and he got acquitted for it.
so the what's going on right now is with a Delaware situation is again the corporate governance. It doesn't matter if shareholders say yes or no. If there's not enough corporate governance to oversee these sort of transactions, then they can argue that shareholders are being taken advantage of, and that's what's going on. Is that I'm providing a lot of examples of failures of corporate governance, and if you guys don't address
people people can make any argument they want, and they do. And Elon gets sued left and right all the time for many years. He's under investigation from many government agencies at the same time over the last 20 years for multiple of his companies, and nothing has ever come of it. So until you have proof of, the fact is this company went from $0 to $500 billion at a very rapid rate, market capitalization, market value, and that happened with much of the same board, much of the same investors, long-term investors. So something is working, right? Omar?
Yeah, I think if shareholders are not seeing good results from the performance of the company, they can vote to fire him. They can vote to remove him from the board. They can vote to not compensate him. There's a lot of tools at our means to make that change, including not voting for any acquisitions that we don't think are beneficial to the company. But the reason that shareholders keep giving him rein to sort of make these decisions, even when some of them are ill-conceived or mistakes, is that he's obviously provided massive shareholder returns and built the business to be far larger than anyone expected was possible. So not everything's going to work out perfectly. Not everything is going to be great, but that's what happens when you take risks. When you take risks, some of them will work out and a lot of them won't.
Yeah, I'm not going to elaborate on this topic too much. I know, Magic, for the record, you're not a shareholder, right? And are you short Tesla stock?
I am not a shareholder, and I am short Tesla stock. But again, I have.
Okay, so just for the record, I'm just not going to let you dominate this space. We only have half hour left with nonsensical fun. You can't do that in Grant's space. Okay, I have other things I need to get to. Machine, we have a question for you from Ranger the dog. Now that he thinks the first Robotaxi ride will occur in November of this year, does he still think Optimus will generate $1 billion in profits before Robotaxis?
It's a good question. I haven't thought much about my prediction timeline on November. I think I said November for first Robotaxi, and I think that's still possible in some limited ODD, in some suburb or something like that. So I think that's still possible on that timeline. I'm not going to say that confidently. I do think overall a robust software that works in a wide variety of spaces is going to take much longer still than November of this year. So I don't think we're going to have something that's operating in many cities across the
So
U.S.
let me ask you something. When did you switch to November of this year? I don't remember hearing that.
Yeah, that was in some spaces a while ago. Like, I don't know, at the turn of the year or something like that.
You think that we're going to have a Robotaxi ride, first paid commercial Robotaxi ride this November?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how people's minds get warped
No. It's
by
just
time.
it's a yes or no question. It's a
Yes.
yes or no question because I
Yes.
thought you were at the end of next year.
No, see, exactly. You're just totally off. You just forgot everything over the last year and a half. When I
That's
was
not true.
laughed, when I was laughed,
What space did you say that in?
this was in this space. My first prediction, which I was laughed and mocked at, was January 2025, and everyone was laughing. That
Okay,
was
so do you think it's going to be? We don't have time for this. Do you think it's going to be a limited kind of geography kind of thing, like level 4?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. I think could happen by January, and then I updated it to November. Some limited, very limited thing.
But
Maybe in like a
Austin or
suburb.
California,
Yeah,
San
like
Francisco?
Phoenix suburb or something like that.
Okay,
Like
Omar.
Chandler.
I think machines just slightly too bullish. I'm expecting a demo on August 8th. So first demo of a driverless ride on August 8th within obviously a confined setting. That's just a dog and pony show, really. That doesn't really mean anything from a technical perspective. But demo on August 8th, we have that confirmed. I'm expecting that by the end of 2025, we're going to have the first driverless service active, probably somewhere like Phoenix or Nevada. And by 2026, it'll really be reaching a serious ride volume by the end of the year. That's kind of where my expectations are right now.
Yeah, I'll take later on all of those things. Machine, do you still think we're going to have 99% of rides, no disengagements by September?
Well,
Pretty
first of
close,
all,
I think.
I didn't even get to answer this first question, which was, am I changing my mind on $1 billion from Optimus versus Robotaxi first? Not yet, because while I said November for first sort of Robotaxi ride, I think there's a long lag there between ramping it up and raising Robotaxi across the U.S. to generate $1 billion in profit on an annualized basis, I believe was the bet. So no, I'm not changing it yet. And to your recent question here, do I still believe in the 99% by the end of September? I do. My contingency there is not contingency, like that's the bet. But my thought was we will have at least V12.5 in service before the beginning of September, and that version will be good enough based on the tweets of the CEO, which of course I'm still skeptical of
You
natural values.
can't even say it with a straight face.
Say what?
Without
Like
laughing.
I still believe it, but of course we're seeing delays.
Of course. I'll give you 12.5. I'll give you 12.6. It's not gonna happen.
We'll see. Not changing my mind yet.
Okay, we can make another bet. If 12.6 is gonna have 99%.
Why? We
You want to do that?
just do 12.5. That's fine. That's what I was thinking. So
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, we can
if
do
you-
12.5. Yeah, I mean the first one stays too, but this is a second separate bet. Just trying to get my batting average up. Inflexity.
Yeah, we had FSD news from Bloomberg today. Tesla has settled a lawsuit against its FSD crash, autopilot crash from 2016 or 17 on Friday.
Omar, what do you
I've linked it down below.
Thank you for Inflexity. Omar, did you see this recent settlement? What do you think about it?
Well, I think it was the driver's fault, probably, but this is probably going to save them some embarrassing public testimony and discovery. So, sounds like a positive, but I mean, how much are they going to be paying on settlements? Sounds like it could get expensive. I don't know what the amount of these past two settlements were, but it could be significant. I don't know if this continues. If the rate of crashes goes down to zero, then they'll obviously have less liability, but it could be a legal risk if they get into the habit of settling these cases. It could also encourage people to go forward and bring a case, even if they don't have a strong case to bring.
All right. if you're requesting to speak and don't get to ask your question, you may leave a reply. There are other people leaving replies in the below the space. I also really love it when people answer each other's questions, so I don't have to.
One interesting piece of news I received from a Tesla employee, Tesla has now added watermarks of the VIN on the release notes page for employees so that they can't share screenshots anymore.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Tesla has added a watermark of the car's VIN on the release note screen for employees so that
Oh,
employees
wow.
can't share the release notes early anymore.
Wow.
That could be part of the reason we've seen less leaks about 12.4.
Mhm. I'm looking through the replies to see if there's anything interesting here. Wow, pretty record participation on YouTube Live today. Interesting. Ranger the dog always asks really good questions, but always to machine for some reason.
Because he knows I'm the only one who can answer them responsibly.
Yeah, sure. Let's switch to stock price for a little bit. So you kind of had a meltdown on X last night, and you went out and said this stock will never increase 5 to 10x for like another 10 years or something, right? What was your actual nonsense? I kind of tuned out after the first word.
The context was some guy who I don't know why anyone follows tweets, when will Tesla have its NVIDIA moment? And when I read that, maybe I'm just more common sense person than the rest of you. I'm reading some company having some explosion in stock price and revaluation as it's massively growing earnings, 8xing in share price over a year and a half. That's what happened with NVIDIA. So when someone asked me if Tesla's going to have their NVIDIA moment, when I answered 2020, they did. They already did, and that's factually true, of course, but also in the context of just because something happened, just because NVIDIA had it, doesn't mean Tesla's going to have it again. That's very presumptuous. So then people start asking, well, what do you think? And of course, I give my details on why I think Tesla might increase market cap by a significant amount over longer time frames. But I don't think any of those are going to happen in some sort of upward explosion of 8x increase in a short time frame, unless the share price stays low for many years while there's rapid progress in things like FSD. That's your only chance to where you'd have such a short-term burst in revaluation. So you're asking me, did I say Tesla likely will not have a 10x increase? Well, 10x increase in share price is $5 trillion. You're going to have a lot of things happen in the next 5 years for that to come to fruition. Massive increase in robotaxi deployment and Optimus, right? To be valued at $5 trillion. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think in a shorter time frame, like 5 years, I think that's going to be hard to do.
Okay, so what is your 50-50 probability estimate for market cap in 5 years?
I'm thinking around 2 trillion, 2 to 3 trillion.
Interesting.
I think you'll
You don't
get.
have any shares in Tesla, right?
Again, I have a little bit sentimental, but I'm looking to buy. I mean, actually, separate.
Okay. Do you have NVIDIA?
No, unfortunately. I on the.
Okay.
Anyways, you don't care. You
So,
don't care.
I don't care.
You don't care.
I don't care.
You don't care.
Yeah, because you're bullshitting. I know that.
I'm not
2 to
bullshitting.
3. just 2 to 3 trillion in 5 years is
Well,
ridiculous. You think there's
yeah,
going to be robotaxis this November? Omar says 2026 for nationwide rollout. You agree. You think Optimus will have better profitability sooner than robotaxis. So you think that in 2 3 years we're going to have nationwide robotaxis and Optimus generating material profits, and you're going to be like 2 to 3 trillion? Are you serious?
yeah, and I think each of those, can generate, on the orders of tens of billions of dollars in profit later this decade, for sure. And you could get $100 billion in operating income per year from these ventures, maybe by the end of this decade, and that would fairly probably value the company at $3 trillion. So, I don't think that's that absurd. Like, to get to $3 trillion, you're probably going to have to be making around $100 billion in annualized operating income. So, what are we making right now in annualized operating income? What is it? Are we making? We're not even making 10 billion. We're making. My math's just like failing me. We're making about $2 per share. So we're making like 6 billion.
Yeah,
We're making 6 billion.
it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing to me that somebody who's making out 5 year out projections without knowing what the
Think
company
about
makes
this.
today.
Think about this. You expect the company to go from 6 billion operating
Listen,
income
you
to
are a
120.
you're a short-term trader. Okay, you're a short-term trader with good hair, but that doesn't mean you can speak to 5 years out without actually doing research about the company's fundamentals. Go ahead.
I understand the company's fundamentals. I understand how long it takes to scale things. And for you to think that Tesla is going to scale their revenue and income, like, I have to do the math, but to go from, say, 100 billion, 6 billion to 100 billion in 5 years is quite a growth rate, which I don't think is going to happen. This just comes down to that. And you can try to model it all out. And you can make different assumptions. Well, they're going to scale robotaxis at 200% year over year. And I'm going to say no, they're not going to be able to scale that fast. It's that simple. It's not that it's not going to be successful. It's just not going to be as fast as you think.
Yoda, and then Wessex.
What's the question?
Wessex.
Hey, Machine, I don't know if you've considered this, but or if this would make you reconsider your thoughts regarding profit, but we're currently around 7,600 per unit sold in gross margin. But assuming we can fully or nearly fully monetize the Robotaxi network, we're looking at, hypothetically though, $30,000 to $50,000 per year per vehicle that's in the network. So when you consider the bottom line, it's going to be a whole lot different game that we're playing at that point.
I think Machine has bad connection. He's probably at the beach again. Omar, what do you think about this valuation discussion? In 5 years, do you think 2 to 3 trillion is a good approximation, a target?
Well, it could be. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that could happen. I like to just go into my investment, and I've been accumulating Tesla shares substantially during this period. I like to just go into it thinking I could just lose all the money. And, maybe it'll be 5 trillion. I can absolutely see a path to 5 trillion. That's not crazy. And maybe it'll be 2 trillion. Maybe it'll be 100 billion if things don't go well. So, I mean, there's a lot of different factors, a lot of different moving pieces in the world that determine where it ends up. And I hope it'll be good. I think they've got, I mean, who else is really going to build a humanoid robot at scale better than Tesla? Obviously, there's a lot of companies trying. So we could debate right now when they're not on the market about who's going to take the market. But I think if Tesla does well and they execute on their plan, like, what's the size of the global labor market? We're really talking about artificial labor here. So, yeah, it could be several trillion dollars. And, if we're talking about like a low interest rate environment where people are flocking back into equities, and at the same time, Tesla has solved autonomy, is running robo taxis, and is putting these robot products out that are starting to do incredible things, the market sometimes can get overly exuberant. There can be, a appreciation of the stock in anticipation of these future earnings that, maybe runs a little bit ahead of itself. But just as people can start to see these robo taxis getting out into the air, uh, they can start to see these robots get into people's homes or in businesses. They start to kind of, do the math on what that could look like, and sometimes overshoot a little bit. So, I mean, the market's basically impossible to predict, obviously. You just kind of have to look at the probabilities of different scenarios and say, okay, I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah, to Essex, number one, I don't personally think that the current vehicles are necessarily going to be robotaxi vehicles. I'm under the assumption that it's going to be specifically design vehicles that are the main revenue generators for Tesla. And, that's not even going into production until 2026 at the earliest. And if you do the math, if we assume, which I think is pretty optimistic, to assume $30,000 in operating income per year per vehicle, Tesla will have to have 3 million of these vehicles produced and running at full capacity to generate the approximate 100 billion in income that they're going to need to be valued even at $3 trillion. And Tesla does not even have the infrastructure for this now to support those cars, the charging infrastructure. This is not something that's going from 0 to 100% in the course of 3 years, 3 to 4 years. So I do believe this is going to be ultimately successful. I just think people are very aggressive in assuming the rate of growth of robotaxi income in a short time frame.
Who are these people you're talking about? It's not us.
Wes just said 30,000 per vehicle, and how much that could be worth. Well, my point is simply that you're not getting $100 billion in annualized income from robotaxis in just a few years. It's just too short of a time frame.
Yeah, I agree. We're six.
Yeah, I think you made some valid points there, with the exception of, if you remove all of the other cars that have already been made, the 6 million, and then anything else that's not robotaxi, that's a large exclusion from the equation you put out there. And then secondly, you earlier mentioned 5 years, so that's what I was going on. I don't think the robotaxi network will be fully monetized at that point, but I think we'll be in full swing. And I think we'll have the charging infrastructure and everything up well before the 5-year mark.
The switch we're talking about 5 years from approximate present day, but the robotaxi vehicle itself is not going to be produced at least for another year and a half. So that's kind of where that time cut comes from. And yes, it's a biggest assumption difference to not assume current cars are going to be really significantly involved, but that's my assumption.
Yeah. Pennington. 15-minute warning. 15-minute warning. Welcome everybody to the 100th episode of Tesla Live. If you like to support the space, the link to Patreon is at the top of your screens. Without my patrons, there's no way we would have made it to 100. There probably wouldn't be even the first episode. So thank you to patrons. Pennington.
Yeah, the other part of the valuation that's interesting is partnerships, licensing. Right now, there's no partners. They have not licensed FSD to a single automaker. So that has significant revenue potential. But if that takes sort of 3-4 years after the license agreement is signed to implement the technology and roll off the production lines for these various other automakers, it's at least, let's say, 4 years from now before that could generate real revenue. So just having enough vehicles to really monetize to a high level. It's just extraordinarily unpredictable. And until we have the validation from another company, you can't really factor that money into any sort of valuation.
That's what machine said. You don't have to request to speak to repeat what machine said. That point is already made, you know?
Well, I was on the phone, so I just
Tomorrow,
didn't listen to that. Sorry about that.
all right. Tomorrow, I forgive you. Tomorrow, we're going to focus on Optimus. I want to understand, especially machines and others' assumptions around Optimus business model and economics. This focus on robotaxis, I think, is a little missing the point. So tomorrow, we're going to balance that out with Optimus discussion. Omar?
Yeah. I think it's safe to assume that it's going to be hard and take a very long time. That's been true in the past, and I think it's safe to assume that's going to be true in the future. Although in the past people were overly optimistic, maybe people are now overly pessimistic. Who knows? We could be wrong again. But it seems safe to assume that things are going to be hard and take a long time. Now, in terms of coming up with a value for the market or trying to figure out what the earnings potential is, it's obviously very difficult and extremely speculative. And that's always the case when you're establishing a new market that didn't exist before. When Apple started and they began assembling computers in the garage, people asked, well, are we really going to get to a world where we have a computer in every home? The market was very unproven. People were probably doing models and saying, okay, well, what percentage of homes are going to have a computer? 5%, 10%? They couldn't imagine that every computer would have, every home would have many computers. So it's really difficult to see on the other side of a tech change like AI and computers that can move around the world and try and make a model. You can do a guess, but it's 100% going to be wrong. The only question is, how far off are you and how close can you get? But sometimes you kind of just need to have a little bit of faith in not necessarily being able to value the earnings opportunity precisely, but just establishing that there is something of value, right? Like with the computer or with an iPhone, saying, okay, we don't necessarily know how much money we can make from this, but we know that people having a computer in their pocket would be very powerful. There'd be a lot of value there, and there'd probably be a way to monetize that. And I think that's definitely the case here. We can see that there's a lot of value in preventing crashes. We can see that there's a lot of value in the convenience you'd get, in the economic opportunities of lowering transport costs. But it's difficult until we get closer to really come up with a model that's concrete. So you kind of just have to look at the value being created and say, okay, hopefully there's going to be some way to capture a meaningful sliver of this value that's being created.
Excellent. But machine wants evidence. He wants to see these numbers. He wants Elon's guarantee, personal guarantee, that Tesla will produce these profits before he puts them into his non-existing discounted cash flow model. When
Well,
you were saying, Omar, this is going to be, we know this is going to be super hard and long, he couldn't wait to jump in to make a mom joke. So there you go, machine. Go ahead.
yeah, it's interesting. I was just talking with some lady the other day who was trying to go on a date with Omar, and she was like sliding into his DMs and saying, "Hey, I listen to you on Spaces. You sound sexy. Let's go out on a date." And at first he would ignore, and then he's like, "Well, I can't. I'm busy all day, every day, trying to attend Spaces to talk about Elon Musk." And she's like sending him sexy photos, and she's like, "You kind of sound like someone I know." But she sent him these photos. He's like, "Okay, fine." And so they go out, and they're in the car, and he's just constantly talking about FSD. And they get to dinner, and he's talking about FSD all the time. She's like, let's just
go back to my place. And he's like, oh, that sounds good, but I really want to see how V12 operates on these roads. Can we just drive around for a while? And she's like, I guess. So they get in the car and drive around, frustrated. And she's like, okay, listen, can you come up and have sex with me? And he's like, well, that sounds really good, but I'm really waiting for this V12.4 update and I don't want to miss it. So she's like, okay, you know what you can do? You can cast your phone to my TV while we're having sex so you can see it when you get the update. And so he agrees. And finally, they're happy. And it turns out, really, the thing that really took me for a surprise was it's Iman's mom. Yes.
You haven't been seeing us in your dreams lately. What's
The
going on?
best here is just Omar.
Do we need to? Did you miss the space yesterday?
No laughing from Omar. This is the best. He's so upset right now with me.
He probably checked out after first sentence. Probably didn't listen to
he's
the
there.
story.
That didn't happen, obviously. But I was just thinking, whether, my girlfriend was listening, that she might not appreciate the story.
All right, I'm sorry to your girlfriend. That was all made up. Okay, it wasn't your mom's mom.
It was Machine's mom.
Machine, do you still have your NVIDIA shares? Let's talk about that for finance.
No, I mean, I told you I sold it before earnings with my plan to.
You sold all that? Okay.
Just rebuy.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Hold on. No, hold on. Let me ask you a question. Can you tell me the name of Microsoft's in-house solution?
Nope.
Can you tell me the name of AMD solution?
Nope.
Omar, can you?
I think their CPU was called Cobalt, and I forgot what the training chip was called. It was it was called Maya.
Yeah, and that's the difference between Omar and Machine. One of them knows and does research. The other one just looks at EPS and PE ratios.
Well, both of us have made a lot of money on NVIDIA, and you've made none. You just have.
You don't even know how much money Tesla made. You don't even know that's you talk about these in this space. You talk about Tesla in these spaces every single day for years and years. You've been following Tesla for more than 10 years. I remember your asinine posts on Tesla Motors Club, thinking that Tesla was going to solve FSD in 2017, and you don't even know how much the money the company makes.
Listen, I'm focused on many companies now. There's more interesting ones than Tesla, but can I just make my point on NVIDIA? Oh my God. So I sold before earnings, and I use call options, so I'm leveraged. So I make plenty of money on it to reduce risk. And after the earnings, I was like, okay, this was good enough to buy back in. But so at 6:30 a.m., before that, I've set limit orders for my call options. And I know, though, for some of them to enter, I don't know the exact strike price that's going to start. And so I kind of have to watch to change the order. But my daughter wakes up early and takes a huge dump. And she's like, Daddy, can wipe me. So I had to go upstairs and do that. When I got back down, the stock was already kind of running away. And so I decided not to chase it. And that still was a mistake. So I did not end up with any NVIDIA shares.
This is the problem.
Says your store. Go ahead.
Yeah, you got to just buy and hold, right? You can't try and get these options plays and figure out the date, and you're going to miss out on most of the gains. You have to remember that most market participants are stupider than you. So whatever you think is unreasonable, it's always going to be a little more unreasonable than that. So everybody was telling me in these spaces, NVIDIA's overvalued. It's probably going to crash. I said, yeah, it probably is going to crash at some point, but I'm just going to hold. and now it's just, growing like crazy after earnings. And honestly, I don't see the situation stopping anytime soon. I think the risks that Yaman points out long term from Microsoft and AMD and others are real. I mean, the amount of capital going into competing with them and having, opposing solutions go into the market, even things like Dojo, I think it does obviously, it'll become greater and greater long term. But in the next few quarters, it doesn't look like it's really having an impact. I mean, even Tesla, they've got their Dojo and they're making progress on it, but they're still buying these NVIDIA chips hand over fist. And I'm not, when are they going to stop? Is it going to be this quarter, next quarter, 4 quarters from now, 8 quarters from now? At that point, maybe I'll reevaluate. But yeah, it looks like we're really
All
just
right.
getting started here.
We have a couple minutes left. Mission, I'm going to skip this for a second. Simon, I believe this is the first time speaker, senior profile manager at Wellington Altus.
Cool. Thanks for giving me the floor. 2 seconds on this is I've realized, and we own Rivian happens to be our largest holding just because it's run so much. But I wanted to give some context is that Rivian, from our perspective, Rivian and Tesla are in a league of their own.
Are you talking about NVIDIA?
Sorry, long day at the office. Okay. I'm trying to leave now. So NVIDIA and Tesla in our league of their own. And what we've noticed, or what we think we've identified, is everybody in this space knows that the reason Tesla is so successful and continues to be successful is they move faster than the competition. They innovate. The rate of innovation, as Sandy Munro has said, is the speed of thought. Yeah. And they continue to do that. And so when we look at
Simon,
NVIDIA,
can you make it? Can you come tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central? So 2 hours. We last about 2 to 4 p.m. Central. If you can't come, I want to focus on this a little bit more tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We have only 2 minutes left. So tomorrow we're going to talk about NVIDIA and Optimus. All right, guys?
Cool.
All right. Thank you. Machine, any last words?
I would just say to Omar, I've made a lot of money, more than if I would have just held the shares, but that's not the norm. That's only for people who, graduate Ivy League.
You're yeah, dude.
You make a lot of money, then one day you just lose it all, and then your house is gone too, and then you're like, shit.
Except for
I think you're overplaying your trading expertise here. Let's not give the bad impression to people. False impression.
Don't worry, I lost millions of dollars in Tesla. Okay.
I don't care. No one cares. I need to close the space. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to tweet out in a second the after party to Patreon. And then tomorrow we're going to be back 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. See you tomorrow.